They called on the third day. Not the first, when he arrived 6 weeks early and I was alone in a delivery room with a nurse named Sandra holding my hand because there was no one else. Not the second, when he was in the NICU and I was sitting in a plastic chair beside his isolate, counting his breaths. Thomas, for my grandfather, was sleeping in the isolate, 18 inches from my left hand. The monitor beside him was green. His breathing was steady. I answered, "Emily, how are you? We heard he arrived early. How exciting. When would it be a good time for us to come?" 72 hours. I had spent 72 hours in this hospital, 26 of them in active labor, the rest in the NICU chair sitting beside his isolate, and that was the first question. When would it be a good time for us to come? My name is Emily Carter. I am 29 years old. I am a high school chemistry teacher in Boise, Idaho. My son Thomas arrived on a Tuesday morning at 3:47 in the morning, 6 weeks early, weighing 3 pounds and 11 ounces, and I delivered him alone because my husband, Scott, was in Seattle for work, and his parents, 40 minutes away in Meridian, had plans they did not cancel. Before I take you back, subscribe and leave a like. Drop your city and time in the comments. I read every single one. This story ends with a phone call I had 72 hours to prepare for. Stay with me. Let me go back to Tuesday morning. My water broke at 11:52 midnight on Monday. Scott was in Seattle, a 3-day conference that had started that morning. I called him first. He was already looking for flights when I called Rachel. It was 12:04 in the morning. She answered on the third ring, the voice of someone woken from sleep but not alarmed. I told her my water had broken. I told her I was 6 weeks early. I told her I was calling a cab and going to St. Luke's and I needed someone to come. She said, "Oh goodness, let me talk to Gerald." I heard Gerald's voice in the background, low, indistinct, then Rachel again. "Emily, Gerald has his cardiac follow-up first thing in the morning. He really can't miss it. And I have the Hendersons coming for lunch. We've had it scheduled for a month. Can Scott come back early?" I said, "I'm going to the hospital now." Rachel, of course you'll be fine. Call us when he arrives." I called the cab. The symbol in this story is Thomas's hospital bracelet, the tiny one they put on him in the delivery room, white plastic, his name printed in small letters, his date of birth, his weight. The nurse handed it to me when they wheeled him to the ICU. I held it in my palm while they settled him into the isolate. I held it like you hold things when your hands need something real, while the rest of you is managing something enormous. Scott arrived at 9:30 Tuesday morning. He had taken the first flight out of Seattle. He walked into the NICU still in his conference clothes, and he sat beside me and he cried, which was the first time I had seen him cry in 7 years. His parents called to check in at 2 p.m. that afternoon. Scott answered. I did not. Scott spoke to his mother for 11 minutes. I know the length because I was watching the clock on the NICU wall. The large institutional one, the kind that marks time with precise indifference to what is happening beneath it. Thomas was stable. The neonatologist had been in noon and used words like encouraging and responding well. I had written both words in the small notebook I was keeping, dates, times, vital updates, everything the nurses told me. I wrote things down when I needed to feel in control of something. Scott's face during the 11 minutes was the face of a man managing 2 things simultaneously, the conversation he was having and the one he would need to have with me afterward. He was not unkind to his mother on the phone. He was not defensive of me in the way I would have liked. He was diplomatic, which was the thing about Scott that I loved in ordinary circumstances and found insufficient in this one. When he hung up, he told me they would come Thursday. Thursday, I said. They feel terrible, he said. Mom said she's been thinking about you all day. I looked at Thomas in his isolette. Thinking about me is not the same as being here, I said. Scott was quiet. I know, he said. The Hendersons came for lunch, I said. I hope it was nice. He did not answer that. I want to be precise about what I felt in those days. Not rage, not the hot, immediate kind. Something slower. The specific accumulation of understanding who people are when the cost of showing up is inconvenient. I had called Rachel at midnight. I had told her I was 6 weeks early. I had asked her to come. She had weighed the cardiac follow-up and the lunch and decided they were sufficient. If you have ever been in a situation where someone you needed chose something else, drop a comment, because those 72 hours in the NICU were when I understood clearly and completely what Rachel had revealed about herself by what she chose. Stay with me. My ally in this story is Sandra, the labor and delivery nurse who had held my hand through the delivery. She was 51 years old, 23 years in the unit, the kind of nurse who had seen everything and still found ways to make each room feel specific and attended to. She had not known me before Tuesday morning. She had been the nurse assigned to my room. She had held my hand because I was alone and because she understood that being alone in that room was something no woman should have to be. She appeared on day 2 with a coffee from the hospital cafe, not the terrible waiting room coffee, the good one from the cart on the 2nd floor. She set it on the table beside my NICU chair without making a production of it. "How are you doing?" she asked. Not the clinical version, the real one. "I'm okay," I said. "You don't have to be," she said. I held the coffee with both hands. "His grandparents didn't come," I said. First time I had said it out loud. Sandra looked at Thomas. "His mother came," she said. "That's the one that counts." I did not cry in front of her. I waited until she left, and then I cried for about 4 minutes, and then I picked up my notebook and wrote down Thomas's 2 o'clock vitals, because he was doing well, and that was what mattered. Thursday arrived. So did Rachel and Gerald, and so did the 72 hours of thinking I had done. Thomas's hospital bracelet was still in my coat pocket. I had transferred it there on day 2 when the nurse had asked if I wanted to keep it as a keepsake. I had put it in the small zippered pocket on the inside of my coat, the one I used for things I needed to not lose. It was there Thursday morning when Rachel and Gerald arrived at St. Luke's at 10:25, which was not the 9 o'clock they had said, but 15 minutes was the smallest of my concerns. Rachel came in with flowers. Not for me, for the room. A small bouquet in a plastic sleeve, the kind you buy at the hospital gift shop on the way up. She handed them to Scott, who found a cup to put them in. She kissed my cheek. She smelled like her house, which was the particular domestic smell of a home I had visited dozens of times and never been fully comfortable in. "He's beautiful," she said, looking at Thomas through the isolette. "Yes," I said. "You must have been so frightened," she said, to me, looking at Thomas. I waited a moment. I was frightened, and I was alone, and I needed someone to come. Rachel looked at me. "I know, Emily, and I feel just terrible." "I'm not saying it to make you feel terrible," I said. "I'm saying it because I need you to understand what that night was. What I'm going to tell you now is not a punishment. It is just how things are going to be going forward." Scott beside me was very still. Gerald looked at the floor. "I need support I can count on. Not just when it's convenient. When I call from a hospital at midnight, I need someone to come. I understand you had reasons. I understand the cardiac appointment was real. but I needed you and you chose something else, and I'm going to need time before I can forget that." Rachel's eyes were wet. "So what does that mean?" she asked. "It means we rebuild slowly," I said. "It means I am going to need to see over time that I can count on you. Thomas is going to need grandparents he can count on, and right now I don't have enough evidence of that." Gerald spoke for the first time. "What can we do?" he said. "Show up. When it's inconvenient, when you have to rearrange something, when it costs you something, that's when it counts." That subscribe button is right there, because what happened in the months after that conversation and the moment that changed how I understood Rachel, I did not see coming. Not from her. The hospital bracelet was in my pocket through the entire conversation. I did not take it out. I did not use it as a prop or a symbol or a statement. It was just there. The weight of 3 pounds 11 ounces, the fact of Thomas, the fact of Tuesday morning. I had been alone in that delivery room, and I was afraid, and I had managed, and Thomas was here, and he was doing well, and I was his mother, and I had shown up completely. That was what I had. It was enough to stand on. Rachel called on a Saturday 6 weeks later. Thomas was home by then. 4 weeks in the NICU, followed by the specific joy of bringing a 3-pound baby home in a car seat that dwarfed him, wrapped in a blanket my mother had knitted. He was eating well. He was gaining weight with the focused determination of a child who had decided to catch up. Rachel called at 8:47 a.m. She asked if she could come over, not for a visit. She said specifically, "I don't need to hold him or anything. I just want to drop something off." She arrived at 10:30 with a lasagna and a card. The lasagna was homemade, the kind that takes 3 hours, the kind that communicates actual effort rather than the gesture of effort. She set it in the kitchen without making a production of it. Then she handed me the card. I opened it. It was not a baby card. It was a plain white envelope with my name on it, in her handwriting. Emily, not Emily and Scott, just Emily. Inside was a note, 1 page, handwritten. She wrote that she had thought about Tuesday night every day since it happened. She wrote that she had not understood in the moment what she was choosing. She wrote that she had spent 43 years being the person who managed situations well, and managing a situation well was not the same as showing up for a person. She wrote, "You called me from a hospital at midnight with a baby coming 6 weeks early, and I weighed that against a lunch. I want you to know that I understand now what that says about who I was in that moment. I am trying to be someone different." 1 page, her handwriting, no performance. I read it twice at the kitchen table while she sat across from me, not saying anything. "Thank you," I said. "I'm sorry it took a written letter," she said. "I'm better on paper." I looked at her. So am I. It was not everything. It did not undo the NICU chair or the plastic cup of flowers from the gift shop or the 11-minute phone call that ended with Thursday. There was still work to do, still trust to rebuild, one inconvenient showing up at a time. But it was real. I could tell because it cost her something to write it. I could see it in the 1 page, in the restraint of 1 page, in the specific honesty of a woman who had written the true version instead of the comfortable one. Gerald began coming on Sunday mornings. Not announced, he would text at 8 o'clock and ask if he could stop by. He would hold Thomas for an hour and then help Scott with whatever needed doing around the house. He did not offer opinions on how Thomas should be handled. He just showed up and made himself useful and asked before he did anything. Week by week, The thing that gets rebuilt the only way it ever gets rebuilt. Thomas's hospital bracelet is in a small shadow box on the wall of his nursery now, framed beside his newborn photograph, the one the NICU nurse took on day 2, him in his isolate with the monitor wires, impossibly small, eyes closed, already here. Every time I walk past it, I think about Sandra's hand and the second-floor coffee and the way she said, "His mother did. That's the one that counts." That is the one that counts. My name is Emily Carter, and I was alone in that delivery room, and I did not let it break me. I let it show me exactly who I was and exactly who I needed around me.